Desire dreams. This smell right here, electric, bold, addictive. Sensual. Desire dreams. Shop Polo 67 EDP.
Hey, yo, pass me the mic. In college, what NIL deal Shedeur Sanders didn't have? Now, endorsements in the NFL, man. Shedeur Sanders signs a deal with Delta Airlines, man. This man just getting it. He just racking all these endorsements up.
Shedeur Sanders was the 144th player taken in the NFL draft. Teams passed on him for 4 straight rounds. The message from the league seemed clear. NFL teams were not willing to bet big on him. But here is where the story gets strange. While teams were treating Shedeur like a 5th-round gamble, major companies were treating him like one of the biggest young stars in football. And now we have a number that makes that difference impossible to ignore. Shedeur reportedly received $17,700,000 in NFLPA group licensing income during his first NFL year. The previous reported record belonged to Tom Brady at $9,500,000. Shedeur did not just beat Brady, he almost doubled him. Here's the part nobody is talking about. NFL teams and major brands were evaluating the same person and arriving at completely different answers. Teams cared about processing speed, sacks, and arm talent. Brands cared about something else entirely. They saw attention. They saw an audience that followed Shedeur everywhere. They saw someone who could dominate a conversation before earning a starting job. One day after the draft ended, Delta announced its partnership with Shedeur and released an ad built perfectly around what had just happened. His football stock had fallen harder than almost anyone expected. His commercial value clearly had not. And that gap between how the NFL valued him and how the market valued him might be the most fascinating story in professional football right now.
Him being available in the 5th round was unfathomable. And Coach, to me, it was a lot of things, but one of the primary things was a historic misreading of the situation.
That is the part NFL teams may have underestimated. Shedeur does not need everyone to like him to be valuable. He needs people to care. His draft slide proved that better than anything. By the time Cleveland made the pick at 144, that selection had somehow become one of the biggest moments of the entire draft. That kind of attention is incredibly difficult to manufacture. Then came the $17,700,000 figure. According to reporting based on the NFLPA's annual filing, Shedeur led the league in group licensing income from May 2025 through February 2026. Travis Hunter was next at roughly $12,800,000. Patrick Mahomes was around $8 million. That last number should stop you. Mahomes is a multiple-time MVP and Super Bowl champion. Shedeur was a rookie 5th-round quarterback who started 7 games. Yet his commercial demand around Sanders produced a number more than twice Mahomes' reported total. Here's the part nobody is talking about. That $17,700,000 does not even include Shedeur's individual endorsement earnings from Gatorade, Delta, Beats by Dre, and Ralph Lauren. Cleveland signed him to the contract you'd expect for pick 144, yet before his rookie year was finished, his value away from the field was operating in a completely different universe. Then something happened that gave his supporters exactly what they wanted. Shedeur won his first NFL start. Against the Raiders, became the first Cleveland quarterback since 1995 to win his first career start. Suddenly, people were not only talking about his name or draft position, they could talk about Shedeur Sanders actually winning an NFL game, and that changed everything.
Off the run by Judkins. Sanders, pressure's coming. Sanders runs away from it. Oh, nearly intercepted. He threw it too hard.
2 guys in the A-gap.
They're down at 8. Here comes the pressure. Running away from it is Sanders. He's looking long. He's got a man. Caught at the 10-yard line. Bonds!
And that matters because the biggest criticism of Shedeur has always been simple. Popularity doesn't make you a franchise quarterback. Endorsements don't win AFC North games. Ralph Lauren can't protect you from a blitz, and Delta isn't completing 3rd and 8 for you. Eventually, you have to prove it on the field. Shedeur's rookie season showed both sides of that argument. There were flashes that made people believe Cleveland might have found something. There were also interceptions, missed opportunities, and stretches where he looked exactly like a young quarterback who still had a lot to learn. That's why his first start was so important. Before that game, Shedeur had barely worked with Cleveland's first-team offense. His first meaningful NFL action came after Dillon Gabriel suffered a concussion against Baltimore, and Shedeur struggled badly after entering the game. He went 4 for 16 for only 47 yards with an interception. Then, Cleveland gave him a full week with the starters before Las Vegas. The difference was noticeable. He looked more comfortable, he pushed the ball downfield, he made mistakes, but he also made enough plays to win. The Browns suddenly had a reason to keep looking.
I'm just thankful that I'm living in the present. Now I have the opportunity to go out there and do the best I can. Will there be mistakes? Of course. But it wouldn't be as many mistakes, we're trying to minimize those most possible.
By the end of the season, the story was still complicated. Shedeur had not produced elite numbers, but he had shown enough to remain part of Cleveland's future conversation. Then came the Pro Bowl selection as a replacement. His statistics clearly were not Pro Bowl level, but it proved something we have been saying throughout this entire story. Wherever Shedeur goes, attention follows. Even his Pro Bowl selection became a national debate. Now he enters his second season competing with Watson for the starting job. There is no guarantee he wins it, but commercially the decision is already fascinating. Cleveland has a player who generated record-setting licensing income before establishing himself as a proven starter. If Shedeur wins the job and starts producing on Sundays, the Browns will not just have a young quarterback, they will have one of the most marketable young players in American sports. Here's the part nobody is talking about. Draft position does not control commercial value anymore. A player can fall to the 5th round and still arrive with an audience bigger than players selected in the top 10. Shedeur entered professional football with something rookies used to spend years trying to build. And imagine what happens if the football catches up. If he wins Cleveland's starting job and starts winning meaningful games, everything changes. The Browns would have landed a starting quarterback with pick 144 who already proved he could generate superstar-level commercial interest before becoming a superstar player. That is not just a quarterback story. That is a franchise-changing moment.
I'm not going to lie, I felt very relaxed. And half of that comes from preparing, studying, and knowing I got God on my side. So throughout all that, I had no worries. I didn't feel nervous or anything before the game because, he took all my worries and everything away.
That's also why comparing his licensing number with Tom Brady is so interesting. Nobody should confuse commercial income with football greatness. Brady built his reputation through 7 Super Bowl championships and more than 2 decades of winning. Shedeur hasn't earned anything close to that on the field, but commercially, breaking a record associated with Brady before establishing himself as a long-term starter tells you how dramatically athlete branding has changed. Shedeur doesn't have to wait 10 years to become a business. He walked into the league as one. And maybe that's the real legacy angle here. Shedeur could become one of the first examples of what the post-NIL NFL superstar looks like. College players can now arrive in the league with major sponsors, millions of followers, established businesses, and audiences that don't disappear because of draft position. The old system was simple. The NFL made you famous. Now, some players are arriving with enough fame that the NFL is inheriting their audience. Shedeur may be the clearest example we've seen so far.
That came out in a federal filing. And it also came out, Shedeur Sanders got paid $17.7 million from the NFLPA. This is obviously the record, the most amount of money that's ever been given from an NFLPA licensing deal, I guess. They said a trading card deal potentially built up half of that. Okay.
So maybe the craziest part isn't that Shedeur Sanders made $17.7 million through NFLPA group licensing. Maybe it's how little his draft position mattered once he entered the league. 31 teams had chances to decide how much they valued him as a quarterback. Brands and consumers made their own decision about how much they valued Shedeur Sanders. Those two answers weren't even close. One side saw the 144th pick, the other helped produce a number that broke Tom Brady's record. Now comes the part that actually decides this story. Shedeur has already proved he can sell. He's proved he can create attention. He's proved his name can survive one of the most embarrassing draft slides we've ever watched. None of that is really up for debate anymore. What he hasn't proved is that he can become a consistently good NFL starting quarterback. If he can't, then this becomes an incredible business story attached to an ordinary football career. But if he can, every team that passed on him is going to have to live with a much more uncomfortable question. Did the NFL underestimate Shedeur Sanders because teams were correctly evaluating the quarterback, or did they spend so much time worrying about everything surrounding him that they missed how valuable the entire package could become? Because if Shedeur wins the Cleveland job and starts winning football games, that fifth-round draft card is going to look stranger every single year. And at that point, Ralph Lauren, Delta, and that ridiculous $17.7 million number won't be the surprising part anymore. The surprising part will be how 143 picks came off the board before somebody finally decided he was worth the risk.